Well, we certainly heard that kind of rhetoric from Prime Minister Netanyahu before. But, Jeremy, I want to just go back to Yair Lapid's remark, because he did make a direct appeal to your party and your party leader, Naftali Bennett, so you should have the right to respond to
I think I'll connect it to what Danny just said. Lapid is apparently preparing for a fifth election. The backdrop has Lapid 2021 with his orange campaign ball. You know, I would have thought he would have chosen a different backdrop to deliver that message. What is important, I would say, about his address just now, instead of things going on in the TV studios or background journalist phone calls, for the first time Lapid is saying with his own voice that he is offering Naftali Bennett to be prime minister and for him to go ahead and go first. If Lapid does end up getting the mandate, I think they'll be very interesting, because as far as I understand, I don't know if Owen is still with us, but legally, only the person who actually receives the mandate is the one that can go ahead and form it. So I'm not exactly sure how that would work.
Form a government, but that doesn't mean he couldn't necessarily do a rotation in which
if he's offering Naftali to go first, I would think Naftali would have to get the mandate. But again, if Owen's still around, I think it's worthwhile to have him weigh in as the constitutional guy. But what I will say is this, that this changes the game, meaning now when Rivlin is making the decision and he has 48 hours to go ahead and decide who of the three candidates he's going to go ahead and propose that to, he has now one candidate who's actually saying flat out his idea is that if he gets the mandate, he is not going to be the one forming the government.
No, that's not. No, that's not. He didn't say that. He said he would let him go first in a rotation. That doesn't mean he wouldn't be forming the government. You
could say that technically he would be forming it together, if you will, but he would not be the prime minister at the beginning of that government.
But there's precedent for that. The unity government of the 1980s.
May have the same. They actually may lean on the same law that has made Gantz as an alternate prime minister. So this can secure Yair Lapid, if he's number 2 in the rotation, that he will.
You would have to pass a law to let that continue, since they passed that as a one-time thing for the previous government.
Okay, but that's not a problem. But again, since those forces would be a majority in the Knesset, that would not be a problem.
Well, you can always change the law. I mean, that's something a little bit ridiculous in the Israeli system, that it is very easy to change constitutional law with a simple majority. But that's correct, Kalev. Theoretically, according to the current law, Yair can get the mandate, then change the law to enable Naftali to go first.
I just want you to respond to the issue about the trial, because Naftali Bennett has said he wouldn't support a law that would give Prime Minister Netanyahu immunity. He has not actually come out and said whether, if, for example, Prime Minister Netanyahu would be convicted, in his view, that means he must step down, you know, immediately. In fact, he's been on the issue of the trial. He's been very circumspect in his comments.
So first of all, in terms of the law, we're against retroactive laws. You know, that he said many times. I believe he said so at this very table. In terms of what happens if Netanyahu is convicted, the current law allows him to maintain his premiership, assuming he's still prime minister, of course, in this scenario, until he exhausts all of his appeals. We saw with Olmert, he got 2 appeals. I would assume Netanyahu would get the same amount of appeals. So from a legal perspective, Netanyahu would be able to go ahead and do something.
I'm not asking you about a legal perspective. That's what I'm asking you.
You know, we would have to, for sure, see. There are a number of items within the indictment that he's right now on trial for. There's breach of trust, there's fraud, and there's bribery. I would assume that, you know, a decision in terms of what we would do after a conviction would be determined in terms of what he was actually convicted of. And I think that's the reason why Naftali is not going to say anything until we go ahead and we actually see what happens. And even with this, it was just said that even with 3 days a week, this is a trial that's going to take some time. I'm not so sure that we're going to be in a position where that's going to be relevant for quite some time regardless.
Okay, let's go back to the